Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Glenn McGowan. This is LCOBMW. Today I'm going to be talking about what it's really like to drive a bag Corvette. In this case, a bag C4 Corvette. I bagged this on my channel maybe 2 years ago or so, and it's got a little bit of a fan following online with other C4 owners, and a lot of people ask me all the time about bagging it opposed to coilovers, and then, you know, if we make the kits to bag it and all that kind of stuff like that. And I thought it'd be a good time to actually talk about, is it really worth bagging it? Pros, cons, you know, some misconceptions about air ride and all that kind of little good stuff, the nitty gritty stuff about actually owning and driving one of these every day. Now, I don't actually drive this every day. I drive it every once in a while. I haven't driven it probably in almost like a month and a half or something like that. I mainly built this to look a certain way. I wanted it to have still that 80s look with the black trim, the black roof, but I wanted it to sit a certain way, have a certain stance, and have more of like a newer modern wheel and tire package. And Air Ride pretty much did the job for me. I originally had this thing on coilovers, which is fine. Actually, as far as handling and performance, there's probably not a better, you know, end price point. There's not a better option than coilovers. But in this case, I wanted it to be really low. When I had my coilovers on it, it was really low, but there was a big issue with the way the half shafts are, because the lower you go, the wheels are up higher, and the angles of the half shafts, and they'll actually vibrate around 50 miles an hour, and that's not fun. I mean, what's the point of having a sports car if you can't go past 55 comfortably? So I decided to bag this car, and I hand built pretty much everything. They don't really have a bolt-in kit where they say they do, but it's never going to be as low as this. So I actually made everything on my channel and made this more of a performance air ride setup. It's got 18-way adjustable shocks on it. Everything's polyurethane bushings. It has heim joint sway bar end links, which we sell on our store. So besides that, this car actually handles better than it's ever did in its whole life, even with the air springs on there. Now, the biggest misconception is air springs are sloppy, they're all over the place, which is not true. So an air spring or an air bag, whatever you want to call it, is just a spring. Whether it's a coil spring, a leaf spring, an air spring, air bag, does the same thing. It supports the weight of the vehicle, so it keeps the thing off the ground. Now, as far as up and down, that's where your shocks come into play. So as far as up and down, that's what the shock does. That dampens your up and down movement. Now, the air springs just keep the thing off the ground, so it doesn't really make the thing sway all over the place. You take the shocks off, then you'll have that. But this car actually handles so good that you wouldn't even know that it is on air ride. And the best thing for me with this thing is that I can have this look, and then the minute I start the car, it raises up and it's a normal ride height. I don't have to worry about speed bumps or, you know, entrances going into people's driveways, and I can just drive it like a normal Corvette and have fun with it. And then when I'm done and I'm gonna park it, I can just lay the whole thing out like that, and it has the look that I was desperately searching for. So today I'm just gonna get into a couple things. We're gonna just start the car. I'm gonna show you exactly step by step everything that I go through with this car, so you get a better idea if you wanna bag your car, what you're gonna deal with. This week's video is brought to you by LCOBMW. Shop our site for Corvette performance parts, merchandise, and much more. See the link in the description or visit LCOBMW. So I'm gonna do a walk around real quick just to show you how low this thing is. So it's actually sitting right now on like the headers, and I think maybe the frame support or something when it's completely aired out, and the bump stops that I put in on the lower control arms, because this thing will actually air out completely where you can't even shut the hood. That's why I put the bump stops in there, because it was kind of a pain in the butt every once in a while, because I didn't want to leave the stress of the tires pushing up on the hood all the time, because actually, like, I did it a couple times and the hood wouldn't even shut right. So I knew that was probably an issue. The way I designed the front was actually I sunk the air spring down in the lower control arm using the factory control arm. I made this like Frankenstein bracket, which is like sandwiched in there, and hung the air spring lower. I did all the numbers just to get it so it would lay completely out like on the floorboards, and I guess I was off a little bit where I went a little lower, but I mean that's kind of what I wanted to do anyway. And it goes completely like a good 4 inches in between the fender and the top of the tire when it's all the way up, which I'll show you once we get it aired up, but we'll do a walk around real quick. So as you can see, this is kind of like how I would park the car somewhere and how I leave it stored like that. And you can see underneath there's my chassis braces, and I don't think they're actually on the ground. I think it's mainly on the headers, but it's pretty close there. Same thing there. And then we'll do a real quick look in the back here. I have my controller sitting right in there, which we'll see in a second. And then this is my setup in the rear. So I use Airlift's performance system, which is really great, I have to say. It's all 3/8 lines, dual compressors, and that tank. You definitely want to run like 3/8 and 2 compressors in a pretty decent sized tank, because if you do 1/4 inch or something like that, it's slow. Like airing it up is slow, airing it down is slow, and 1 compressor takes forever. So like as this thing sits here, I'm gonna show you when I start it. Because it's been sitting so long, there's like no air in the tank, and like the back will pop up and the front will stay down until the whole system's filled. Now, if you had a 1/4 inch system with 1 compressor, you're gonna be waiting way longer. And this fills pretty quick, but it's still gotta wait a couple minutes before you start it and drive it, especially if it's been sitting for a while. But normally if you're driving it all the time, you're not gonna have any issues with running out of air or anything like that. It's gonna be pretty much just turn the key, you know, it'll lift up, compressors will cycle, fill the tank, and you'll be on your merry way. So that's the plus side of having the dual compressors, which I am happy. I had a mini truck like 100 years ago, which is like my first air ride, and I only had originally 1/4 inch, 1 compressor, and I instantly changed it because it just took forever. And like, because you're adding this extra system to the car, you want it to be, you know, kind of easy to operate the car. Because if you had coilovers on it, it's never even a thought. You just hop in it and drive it. But when the car sits for a while, these are kind of little things that you're gonna run into. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna start it, and with the Airlift system, the minute you turn the key, it'll air up. But I'll show you what it looks like when it doesn't air up all the way. Biggest cost if it starts. 80s Corvettes and their electrical problems. It just moved up a little bit in the back because it's like there's no air in it at all, barely. It's like 45 pounds or something like that. So the compressors are running right now, so I'm gonna give that a couple minutes just so I can air it up so I can actually move the car around here. All right, so it's been a couple minutes. The shop is filling up with exhaust fumes, so the tanks are full. I'm just gonna air it up real quick so I can show you what it looks like here. Okay, so this is the ride height. So it looks just like a normal C4 Corvette, which is kind of cool because then I can drive it and no issues. So we'll just do a quick walk around here. Now, I do have the front set a little high. So when I normally kind of lower it down a little bit, but I can adjust that. With the 3P Airlift system, it gives you multiple settings, which is great. Like key on start, it gives you a park setting, it gives you another setting, like if you want like a cruise setting, you're going up to a car show or something, you could hit that, it'll drop pressure, so it has like a lower stance. And then I believe there's another ride height. There's a couple of like little settings that you could set up so you can just have a cruise in it, you know, drive it normally, a park setting. So it's kind of fun with that. Like you don't have to constantly be toggling manual switches and popping out, seeing what works and stuff like that. So at first though, you got to kind of figure out what pressure is working for you, just to get your ride height set up, and then from there get your settings, and then you're good to go. But besides that, we'll take a look real quick. So it's sitting pretty high in the front there, probably like it was from the factory. I don't know, I don't remember. Same thing for the rear there too. This is set so the rear half shafts are parallel with the way they're supposed to be, so there's no vibrations or anything like that. That's probably like what you'll get if you put like lowering bolts or something on the back of your C4, or even just coilovers. That's like maybe a 1.5 inch drop or something maybe. So pretty normal looking. So let's peek in at the suspension here. So there are my control arms, the upper ones with the urethane bushings, all new ball joints. There is my 18-way adjustable QA1 shock, and then down at the bottom there, you kind of see it poking out a little bit. That's the air spring. And then those flat bracket pieces, like right here, that's the bracket that holds it in there, and everything bolts in, even with that shock mount, that's all part of the bolt-in bracket assembly. And what I did for the top was I notched out a lot of the frame there, and I put a flat airbag bracket there so I didn't have to cut anything out, and you can get those for cheap. And you can see there's the line and the fitting for that. So I'm gonna kind of peek under the back here just to show you what I did. So normally with the Corvette, it has a transverse leaf spring that goes to like rear, like knuckle assembly to rear knuckle assembly. And what I did was I took the lower control arm that you would adjust like the camber with and stuff like that. I made a bracket out of 2x2 steel, and I made a airbag bracket off the back of that. And then I made an anchoring point where your factory bolt would go, and that kind of supports that. So I didn't add any extra brackets or arms, which is kind of like the normal, which people would do adding air ride. They would just kind of replace the spring with a series of arms and mount their air spring on that, which I didn't do. I kind of wanted to eliminate adding extra metal or anything, so that's why I utilized that lower control arm, and having that bolt in there actually supports the back of the bracket where all the way the air spring pushes down. But let me show you. So here you have it. So you can see where the air spring mounts to there, and it's got like a diffuser look to it, and then you can see where the bolt is, and that keeps that up, because if not, the air spring's gonna push that whole thing down and put like a ton of torque on that lower control arm. But it is beefed up, and it's got urethane bushings too. Now, it's kind of hard to see the front, but if you look forward there, I made a shock bracket that would fit the install height of the shocks that I got. It's kind of like the same as making a coilover lower mount instead of using the normal stud that comes off of the knuckle. But other than that, that's the only thing I made. So I didn't have to add any extra pieces for the air spring itself. I utilized what was there, keeping the weight down. And the other thing, which is kind of crazy, is if you look up here, so I made these brackets for the rear toe bars, and they bolt into the knuckle place, and that's a clearance thing. So there's a bunch of issues I ran into with the air spring hitting the tie rod and, you know, clearing the frame to get this low. So there's a lot of tweaking and stuff that I did just to get that, and that's got Heim joints in there too, and that's all bolted in. And then I used the top cross beam piece that mounts the differential as my airbag mount, and you can kind of see that bolt through there. That's what mounts the top. So that's what my suspension looks like. So if you have questions about that, or you know, were curious about doing it yourself, feel free to jump back in the channel and look at those videos, because I did everything kind of step by step, showed you exactly what I did to make all those things. Originally my plan going into it was that I was going to be able to like manufacture the brackets and sell them as like a kit, but I decided not to for liability reasons, just in case, you know, something wasn't installed right and someone got hurt. So I decided not to do that, but feel free to jump back if you wanted to bag your car. I've had really good luck with this. All the metal work, all the brackets and stuff like that, there's not been an issue at all. I use just like a Harbor Freight MIG welder to make everything. I do have like a metal fab background a little bit, so I kind of do know what I'm doing as far as that stuff is concerned, but feel free to take the ideas to, you know, use on your car if you wanted to, because I think that's kind of like cool to be able to make that stuff yourself, and that's kind of what the channel's all about. So if you have questions about that, you could always hit me up on like Facebook or Instagram, or just email me at etwasbone.com. Usually it's hard for me to go through the comments, but always hit me up on that. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. So let's get this thing fired up. Let's go for a drive, and I'll see what other like bad things that pop off in my head while we're driving. Biggest thing with the air ride inside the car here, and now there are other ways to do it. You can mount the compressor and the tank like under the car, or get creative with it, but because I have it on display, it's loud when the car and the windows are up. Like, you can kind of always hear it, and it luckily doesn't run for that long, but that's probably like the biggest thing offhand that's kind of a pain. The other thing I would say too is like the actual controller. I have it in a spot where I kind of have to look down, and a lot of people mount them kind of up in the car somewhere, like eye level, so you can kind of keep an eye on the pressures and stuff. That would be the other thing that's kind of like, you kind of have to keep an eye on it. Now, if you have like the level adjusters on your car, it kind of just automatically adjusts for you, but at the end of the day, I mean, you're driving around in air holding you up from wrecking on the side of the road, so you kind of just have to keep an eye on like
air. Now, it'll warn you if there's like a system leak detected and stuff like that, but, you know, for peace of mind, like, I'm constantly looking at this freaking thing because, you know, you can have issues. It's just going to happen. So it's like, you know, having it in here is like just one more thing to look at. So I would suggest actually like mounting it somewhere on the dash where you can actually see it instead of like constantly looking down, which I'm doing right now. But besides that, I mean, driving the car on air ride is nice. Like I said, this thing is solid. It feels really good on the road. You can hit like any corner as aggressive as you want. And there's no real issue. Like, you know, I don't have to worry about, oh my God, there's a pothole coming out. I mean, I still do. It's just, you know, habit at this point. But I don't have to worry about coming in too hot, you know, like pulling into a store or something like that. I'm pretty much good to go with that. But besides that, it's kind of fun. And the amount that I drive the car is perfect for me. Now, if I daily drove this, I'd probably be a lot more concerned, mainly because it's just one extra thing you have to worry about. And if you're commuting back and forth to work or something like that, you know, it's just one more thing. And like, you're going to have a fitting that leaks, or, you know, hopefully, you know, an airline doesn't pop on you, which it can happen. It happened to me. But besides that, you know, for me, for this car, like, it's perfect because, like I said, that's exactly what I wanted to do when I built it. I wanted it to look a certain way. So the air ride pretty much gave me that. And, you know, I like driving my cars, and I don't really like want to be bounced out of the damn thing while I'm driving it. So having this, like, drive it up at like grandpa's height and then slam it like you're, you know, young and cool again, it works. And another thing too, which is a little off topic, putting the 6-speed in here really woke this freaking thing up. And I talked about it before when I swapped it. It was a 4+3 car, but putting the 6-speed in here really made a big difference. Okay, so I come to a stop here. I want to show you how loud it is to air this freaking thing out. Okay, the windows are down, so it wasn't that loud, but windows up, it can be a little loud when you air this thing out in here. But the compressor's right there, the tank right there, so it's just kind of the name of the game. Okay, my favorite part of the day, kind of get refueled for the rest of it. So another thing just popped in my head too, because everything's back here and the glass is right there. It's always exposed to the sun. So mainly on like hot days, it may do it now, but normally on like summer days, the sun just beating on that, when I come out to start the car, like everything will work fine, but it gives me a default code. Sometimes I have to unplug the module or like bring it inside in like the shop and then plug it back in, and then it'll go back. So it actually like doesn't allow me to do all my automatic controls. I have to manually air it up, which is kind of a pain in the butt. And, you know, it being in the sun just for a little bit will do it. Like, I've been going in Dunkin' Donuts for like 0.2 minutes, and it might do it now, but we'll see here in a second. No, it's fine this time, but it is kind of like, you know, it's November here, so it's just a warm day, but any like hot day, or even I just pull it out with the sun out, it just doesn't. I have to little reach back, disconnect it, let it sit for a couple minutes, and then do it. But it still has all the functions of the manual up and down, so it's not like you're stranded, but it's kind of like a pain in the butt now that I'm thinking about it. Sometimes I think maybe it'd be nice to kind of relocate everything, but I do like the way the thing looks back there. So something fun, I'm currently going over a set of 4 speed bumps. Now, I used to avoid this road on the way back to my house because there was 4 or 5 like giant speed bumps, and these things are like this high. So I was like, oh God, I can't go on that road. But with the air ride, I don't even think twice. Some of my other cars I actually don't, like my 911, I don't drive on here, that's too low. Something else I don't drive on here because it's like kind of a pain in the butt, and I kind of avoid this area. But another plus of the air ride is that it doesn't matter, you can go right over it like it's nothing. Like a normal car, that's weird.
Okay, let's do it. Pros and cons. Okay, first thing that I didn't write on my list here that I realized when I was just getting out of this thing is getting out of this thing. It's like a pain in the butt to get out of these cars as it is, but when the thing is on the ground, I have to like put all my stuff like out of the car and then grab the A-pillar and pull my big ass out of the thing because it's an inch off the ground. So that is definitely one of the checks in the con list, but it's not a big thing. I mean, when you build something like this, like it's not about comfort. You know, you want comfort, get an SUV. So, okay, so the biggest like con for air ride is blowing a line or like a fitting or something like that. So I have 3 scenarios here that happened to me with this. One was when I bought the manifold, I bought the whole airlift performance thing. Right out of the gate, this is like the pressing style fittings. One of them was leaking right out of the gate. The minute I opened the box and hooked it up, they have a really good warranty exchange and stuff like that, but it took like a while for them to get it. Like you have to send them pictures, send it out to them. But if you take it out of the car and it's air ride, you can't drive the car. So I kept it in there because they were like back ordered at one point. So I kept it in there and just kept filling it while I was driving, which was kind of dumb, but it was fine for as much as I drive it. And then when they were ready and they had more in stock, I sent it out to them while I was doing maybe like the 6-speed swap or something like that because the car was down and off the road. But if you have to send something back to them, like your car is down. So just freaking leave it on the side of the road or the side of your shop or whatever, because it's going to take, I think maybe like, I don't know what it was, maybe a month or 2 just for them to get it back. And they'll only warranty it if they say that it's like, okay, it was definitely our fault. In this case, since it was brand new, you know, that was the issue. So they just like fixed it, sent it back to me, or gave me a new one. The other thing was, it was like a cold day, like the middle of January or something. I aired the car up to move it, and the driver's side rear fitting for the airline was leaking. So, I mean, it just happens. It just was leaking because of like the angle. It wasn't like a straight shot down to the fitting. And I had since corrected that, but that's mainly what it was. It's one of those push style connectors, and it was just not completely straight down. It was pushed off to the side. So vibration and all that through time made it leak. And the worst case scenario that happened to me was I had an airline blowout. Now, it wasn't for no reason. It was all, you know, just kind of like something actually was my fault, believe that or not. So I originally bagged it before I did the exhaust, I think. And then I ended up putting headers in the car. That's what it was. I put headers in the car, and they were like a lot wider and longer, and it put it closer to one of the airlines. So it actually heated the thing up, melted it, and it popped while I was driving. So I think I have a video of it or whatever, the damage, but it wasn't horrible. It could have been a lot worse. And then like I ended up just driving it home. It was like a mile up the street. I lifted the hood because the tire was rubbing on the hood so bad it burnt a hole through the fiberglass on the exterior. And I was literally looking through the slot in the headlight to get it home, and it was like dragging on like the front balance and stuff like that. But I was able to get it home because I mean, what are you gonna do, hire a flatbed and they're gonna drag the thing up and rip everything apart? So I just said, it can't be any worse than this, drove it up the street, and that was it. So I then relocated the line and had no issues. I wrapped my headers and stuff like that, and there was a couple times I actually went back through and looked and made sure nothing was rubbing. Several times, pretty much every time I'm underneath the car, I just make sure there's not anything that I did miss, because you know, a little bit of vibration, if that thing's not tied down, man, it's just going to wear through eventually. You could run like copper lines or whatever, but you know, I don't have all the time in the world to do that. So you know, besides that, that's the biggest thing to me that comes up in my head, is just, you know, even in the back of my head now when I'm driving, I'm like, everything's going really good. Like, you know, I'm just waiting for something to pop, you know what I mean? But it doesn't mean it's going to happen. And a lot of times it's kind of on you. It's like, you know, you didn't run it right, or it's touching this or whatever. So it's like, that's just the name of the game when you're building a custom car. You're going to have little things to work through. Anybody who says they don't, obviously don't do this enough. But besides that, you know, those things happen. Let's see what else on my con list here. Yeah, I think I pretty much went over everything when I was just doing the drive and stuff like that. That whole thing with the manifold when it sits outside, you know, I had this parked outside, like I was saying, and then like I go to start it and it gets system default, and then I manually lift it up, you know, which isn't the end of the world. But if you're driving this thing on a warmer day, like you gotta literally unplug the thing and let it sit. The solution is obviously, like if you're gonna daily drive this, like you're not gonna have everything displayed underneath the glass. You're gonna probably put it away, or you're gonna put it in those little compartments behind the seats or underneath the car or something. I mean, you can get creative with it, but I wanted to kind of like show it off. Besides that, I think that's it. Checking the pressure, it just being a whole extra system and a whole other thing to worry about. But you know, I chose that, and other than that, I think the pros definitely outweigh the cons. As far as like the drivability is the best. Like, you know, like I said, I can drive over speed bumps. I can just whip this thing around and don't have to worry about the tires rubbing in the wheel well, you know what I mean? With coilovers, I had to have everything like dialed in and cambered in so nothing rubbed, and I'm like driving, listening to see if anything's rubbing, and like this, it doesn't matter. Like I'm high enough off the ground that like I don't have to even think twice about any of that. I can get in and out of any entrance that I want with the thing now, and have no real issues with it. So I mean, it's really got that whole best of both worlds in my opinion. Now, if it was a daily driver, like I was saying before, like I don't think I would definitely go this route. Part of me sometimes wishes I would either build like another C4 with coilovers, because I really like that setup. Coilovers is kind of like my thing. I love, almost all my cars are on coilovers, so I really like the handling aspect of that. But with this car, like I said, it was a purpose-built car, so I kind of wanted it to look like that. So that's, you know, pretty much by choice. Yeah, so pretty much that's it. I mean, having airlift performance is really nice. It takes the whole like, you know, guessing out of like settings and stuff like that, which makes it really nice, especially from coming from manual gauges, which I used to have back in the day. So all in all, I'm happy with this thing being bagged. So, you know, to me, it's kind of like what I wanted to do ultimately, and the thing still runs great and handles awesome. Like I was just out, just kind of hitting some corners and stuff like that. So there's really no downside of having it for me, except for the worrying about something popping. So, you know, if you have any questions about this, like I said, reach out, don't hesitate, Instagram or edwardspone.com if you're looking to bag your car or something like that, whatever I can do to help you or give you information or talk you off that ledge of doing it. So if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. Thanks for watching.